My dad met Ashley 9 months after my mom passed. He told me that they were actually married, not just dating.
So her claim was that while she was pregnant with their daughter, he poisoned her through heavy metals.
They disproved all of the allegations like every other time, but that started the real problems between Ashley and Doug.
He's saying the neighbor came over, female neighbor. It was a domestic. She shot her husband.
A bitter custody battle, an alleged poisoning, and a fatal shooting are all at the heart of the case against defendant Ashley Benefield. She is a former ballerina, and she's charged with second-degree murder in the shooting death of her husband, Doug, who was twice her age. Benefield claims she shot him in self-defense after a domestic argument, but the state of Florida isn't buying it. Not buying self-defense. For more on the Black Swan murder trial, once again, here's our Venipolitan.
Everything was very normal. I had 2 loving parents.
That is 21-year-old Eva Benefield, reminiscing on what life was like with her parents, Doug and Renee. Eva lost her mother back in December of 2015 from an undiagnosed heart condition. From then on, her family life became unsettled. 9 months after her mother's death, Eva's father, Doug, met 24-year-old Ashley Byers, a ballerina and swimsuit model, and 2 weeks later, they were married.
He eventually fessed up and he said, yeah, so we're dating. The next day I met her and we picked her up from the hotel that she was staying at here in Charleston. And then the following day, it was a Sunday, he told me that they were actually married, not just dating.
Their marriage quickly began to deteriorate once Ashley became pregnant.
Shortly after that is when she starts all the drama of accusations, but that started the real problems between Ashley and Doug.
As Ashley and Doug's relationship became more and more strained, the two became embroiled in a bitter custody battle over their young daughter. They went to court to hash it all out, but Ashley went on to make a shocking accusation, claiming that Doug poisoned her while she was pregnant.
It was a dramatic accusation that involved days of testimony in court in Manatee County. We had nationally recognized experts that testified, and there was just no evidence at all.
It was an accusation the judge didn't believe, saying Ashley's story didn't possess a scintilla of truth. Despite the bitter conflict, Doug had been trying to work things out with Ashley, but the tensions between them grew. And on September 27th, 2020, it all came to a head.
She's with me now, quite upset. The weapon is here. We need the police before her mother and the little girl gets back from the park. I don't want them to find it.
Yeah.
You want me to go over and look at anything, or just wait for the police?
No, I want you to just wait for the police, okay? So they were in an argument?
I don't know. She came in. She was quite hysterical. I didn't know who was banging on my door. It said that he attacked her, and she shot him. They've been having trouble.
Ashley shot Doug with a .45 caliber handgun, an act that took the life of Eva's only surviving parent.
I mean, at first, it was really devastating, but I have a great support system. I have a lot of good friends and family.
Ashley claims she acted in self-defense, but prosecutors aren't buying it and have charged her with second-degree murder.
All right, the court has found that Benefield raised a sufficient claim of entitlement to immunity under Florida's Stand Your Ground law. Now both parties will be back in court next week for this big 2-day pretrial immunity hearing. The burden of proof is now on the state of Florida to overcome the immunity by clear and convincing evidence, and Court TV will be there for all of it, covering both sides as this battle is in front of this judge. Noah Pines, Ted Golden still with us. Noah, there's the Castle Doctrine, there's Stand Your Ground. It depends on state to state with self-defense. Florida's Stand Your Ground. What are the hurdles, I guess, that now the state has to get over to not have this go away?
Well, I mean, as you just said, the state has the burden clear and convincing, but it's well below their burden what they'd have to prove to a jury at trial, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. Obviously they're still going to have that burden at trial to prove that she did it, and this was not justified. The problem is, typically force has to be equal. So if I slap you, you can't shoot me. There are certain exceptions. If I'm breaking into your house and I offer violence to you, then typically you can shoot me. But obviously they lived in the same house. So not only does the defense have to say that she was in fear, but that her use of force was reasonable under the circumstances, which it doesn't sound like it was.
Ted, trying to decipher a domestic like this for law enforcement, what's the strategy? How do you do it? Because it seems very convoluted.
Do you hear the hunter or the lion? In this situation, she's clearly, beyond what we ever could think about as far as her pulling a gun and shooting the man. But she's got to be able to justify why she pulled it and what she was doing when it took place. And the only way she does that is to take the witness stand. So she's got to be able to show that she was in fear of her life, that he had done something to cause her to be in fear of her life, and hopefully that she can show some injuries. She doesn't have any injuries. There's nothing she can do except accept whatever the jury's ruling is. But the stand your ground defense is common in this situation, especially these days. But in this situation, it's clear that she was the one who was going to gain from the fact that he's now deceased.
No, let's just assume that this is going to trial, and she takes the stand. Presumably, she would have to take the stand in a case like this because, as Ted pointed out, I'm unaware of a long track record of domestic violence, physical violence that she can rely on. How do you convince a jury that you're telling the truth? Because taking the stand is difficult, and convincing people that you're telling the truth is difficult, especially if maybe you're not telling the whole truth.
Well, if you are telling the truth, it's not as difficult, obviously, to convince the jury. But yeah, you have to tell a story. Lots of times, though, defendants do give statements to the police, and a prosecutor will want part of the statement in, and the whole. I mean, I've had that happen in some self-defense cases where a prosecutor made really a mistake. They put my client's statement into the police, which put up his self-defense case, so I didn't have to put my client on the stand because we had it all on videotape, and it was. It was good for my client because I don't think he would have fared well on cross-examination, especially in a case like this where you have an allegation she's made in the past which was false. So if she says he did all this stuff, then that prior false allegation about him poisoning, you're definitely going to open the door to that coming in, and that's not going to be good for her.
Ted, how is the neighbor? She did run to the neighbor's house and immediately tell the neighbor, this was self-defense. He was attacking me. That will be important, one would think, for her case.
Well, it's not the same as a spontaneous utterance, but it does give her some credibility when it comes to her making a statement to the neighbor about what she had just done. And of course, with the recording from the police 911 call, that too is a benefit to her because of his statements at that point in time. But again, when you're saying that you did something, you've got to be able to show that you've got some injuries that warrant what happened to you. And in this situation, I don't know what the injuries were to her physically, but she's got to be able to show that and testify to it. So it's a good situation in some instances, but it's not going to help her because she's got to be able to explain why she did what she did.
Why did she call the police? I mean, running to a neighbor's house this day and age is, especially if you don't know your neighbor well, is kind of weird, if you ask me. So it seems a little staged. Most people would pick up their cell phone and call the police immediately and talk to the 911 operator. So running to the next door neighbors is a red flag to me.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll see this play out next week. It will be fascinating for sure. I want to thank Noah Pines and Ted Golden for joining us with their valuable time. Enjoy the holiday weekend, gentlemen.